Back here tonight, we're combing through the details of the newly released arrest report of Brandon Portillo. But before we get to that story, a quick timeline of what happened that night.
Well, it was Friday, January 31st. Terrible night. Around 9:30 p.m., 3 Corpus Christi police units responded to a traffic stop pulling over a driver for racing on Highway 358. And then just after 9:40, 26-year-old Brandon Portillo, driving a pickup, smashed into 2 of the police units there at the scene, killing Officer Alan McCullum and severely injuring fellow officer Michael Love. Portillo said to be intoxicated at the time.
Which brings us to tonight. New details revealed in that arrest report. We're also hearing the scanner traffic in the moments following that deadly crash. Our James Ayala is here now with the details.
Leslie, Joe, this is that arrest report right here. In their own words, here's what the officer on the scene of this crash describes.
The 2 officers are hit. Our 2 officers are hit. Is breathing. Unconscious, but is breathing.
We're also bringing another medic up here on the highway. Officer Love has his right leg is injured.
It's those frantic words that sent first responders racing to help 2 of their own. When they arrived on scene, one of their worst fears was a reality, a crash involving 3 police cars and 2 other vehicles. An arrest report obtained by 3 News is shedding new light on what happened that tragic night. The report, written by an officer on scene, states that the person behind the wheel, Brandon Portillo, was seen getting out of his truck shortly after the crash. The officer explained, quote, "Portillo did not seem concerned or aware of what just happened." The officer described Portillo's appearance, writing, "He smelt of alcohol and his eyes appeared red and glossy." The report went on to say a field sobriety test could not be completed because Portillo started to fall asleep. Police say he was believed to be under the influence. Portillo was then transported to Doctors Regional Hospital, where he reportedly stayed asleep and was, quote, "snoring loudly." The officer made a specific note, writing, "Portillo never asked about the officers injured at the scene." The officer alleges when Portillo woke up, he asked why he was handcuffed and couldn't contact his family. It was then the officers told him he had killed a police officer. Police say Portillo went back to sleep. The report states medical staff believed Portillo suffered a traumatic injury and would need to be taken to a trauma hospital. The officer who accompanied Portillo during the transport alleges Portillo opened his eyes and told the officers, quote, "My life is over." Police also finding Portillo had been driving with a suspended license since July 31st, 2019. He remains in jail on a $1.5 million bond. James Ayala, 3 News.